Week will mark the one-year anniversary of the beginning of the Trump administration, yet still the never-ending Russia investigation grinds on. Steve Bannon was just subpoenaed to appear before special counsel Robert Mueller's grand jury. He also testified today before the House Intelligence Committee. Bannon refused to answer the committee's questions about his time at the White House. That prompted committee members to subpoena him on the spot. Congressman Trey Gowdy of South Carolina was there, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So did Bannon admit being a Russian agent? What did we learn?
We learned about a new privilege that before today did not exist. It's an executive privilege that covers transition communications, communications while you're working at the White House, and then communications after you separate from service at the White House. So that's why the subpoena was issued. It's because it is the most tortured analysis of executive privilege I have ever heard of. So when you make very provocative claims like treason and unpatriotic, and there's a 0% chance that these Russian lawyers weren't walked up to then see candidate Trump, then you're going to be asked about it, and you're going to be asked a lot about it, and that's what we tried to do today.
But does anyone believe those claims are true? I mean, I'm sort of losing track of the point of this whole exercise. Does anybody on Capitol Hill think the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government in order to subvert our democracy?
Well, I can't speak for my friends on the other side of the aisle. Adam Schiff said he had evidence of collusion before we even started. Yeah. I have seen no evidence of collusion between the Russians and President Trump, between the Russians and the Trump campaign. But it was Steve Bannon who used the word treasonous, and it was Steve Bannon who used the word unpatriotic. Those are two pretty serious accusations to level, particularly at the president's son. So you're going to be asked about it, and he also needed to be asked about things that happened with respect to Comey. The reason we had a little hiccup this morning was because executive privilege now covers things before you become the chief executive, which is just mind-numbing, and there's no legal support for it. But we can't make a witness answer a question.
So you've been in the middle of this investigation for a long time. What's your conclusion? Do you think your Democratic colleagues are acting in good faith?
I'm not good at judging people's motives. I can tell you, having been around Congress for 7 years, there's a built-in advantage for the Democrats in dragging this out as long as they possibly can. And they were really, really reticent to start. So once you are reticent to start, that tells me that you don't have an end date. They want this to drag through the 2018 elections. They want to retake the House. It is our responsibility to conduct as thorough an investigation as we can, but also do it in the most expedited way that we can. It'd be really helpful if the Democrats wanted to get started a little sooner, like in March or April of this year, but they didn't. So that's the politics. But quite frankly, Tucker, I don't think any of your viewers are holding their breath waiting on what a congressional investigation uncovers. I think they're waiting on Bob Mueller because his investigation carries more credence with them than ours does.
Well, the whole thing just seems so stupid to me. I mean, I'm willing to believe wrongdoing, on a lot of levels by a lot of people, but Russian collusion seems unproven. I wonder, just hypothetically, if this roles were reversed and Democrats held all the levers of power, do you think Republicans would be able to do what Democrats have done, which is drive this investigation from the beginning?
No, I can tell you firsthand we will not be able to do that because when President Obama was in office, we had an impossible time getting access to documents and witnesses when I was leading another investigation. But the biggest headwind of all wasn't President Obama. It was the media. The mainstream media could give a damn less about what happened in Benghazi. They're really, really interested in what happened in Russia, in part because they don't know anybody that voted for Donald Trump. So they're still trying to figure out how this election occurred and how his election occurred. So the mainstream media is the biggest difference to me between the investigation I did a couple years ago and the one we're doing now.
Yeah, it sure seems that way. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on for that update.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Event. Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Democrat Phil Murphy replaced Chris Christie today as governor of New Jersey. And one of the very first things he did was create a new high-profile state agency. Can you guess what it's going to do? It won't be stamping out rampant opioid abuse in New Jersey, unfortunately. It won't be working to boost that state's lagging economy either. It won't fix the budget, which is perpetually in deficit, or even fill some of those ubiquitous potholes that test your shock absorbers when you pull off for coffee on the Garden State Parkway. It certainly won't be fighting crime. In fact, it'll be doing just the opposite. Governor Phil Murphy's new state task force will exist explicitly to subvert and undermine America's existing laws. The office is called the Office of Immigrant Defense Protection. It'll offer legal assistance to illegal immigrants so they can evade deportation or at least delay it long enough to receive the driver's licenses and taxpayer-funded college aid that Governor Murphy also wants to give them. So the message of all of this could not be clearer. Governor Murphy's top priority is not the citizens of New Jersey, but instead people who shouldn't be there in the first place. If you don't believe that, take a look at New Jersey's cities, nearly all of which are hurting badly and have been for generations. Camden, right across the river from Philadelphia, is one of the toughest places on this continent. Its unemployment rate is more than double the national average. 30% of its residents live below the poverty line. Parts of it are so dangerous you wouldn't walk down the street. Newark and Paterson are not much better than that. But Governor Murphy has not announced a new state agency to fix those places. No other liberal governor in America is doing that either, because, let's be honest, Democrats have given up on blighted American neighborhoods. The schools are terrible. They're not getting better. The people there shoot each other. Who knows why? Unemployment, broken families, drug addiction. It is a tragedy in slow motion, and everybody knows it. But where's the energy to make any of it better, to help our fellow Americans? Well, it's been siphoned off to serve a new and more fashionable cause, one not incidentally with greater long-term electoral prospects. Illegal immigrants, that's the new cause. As for the American poor, people whose families have been here for 300 years and are still suffering and dying young, as long as Democrats take their votes for granted, they'll continue to get lip service, and that's it. John McKeon is a member of the New Jersey Assembly, and he joins us tonight. Mr. McKeon, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Tucker.
So I just checked the numbers, and in Newark, New Jersey, I think the state's still the biggest city, about 12% of high schoolers are adequate in math. In Camden, among kids in grades 3 through 8, it's 7% have reached the math standard. Why wouldn't the incoming governor make that his priority and not legal aid to illegal aliens?
Well, I think you're unfair in the premise of what you said. And first and foremost, as it relates to New Jersey, there's 500,000 undocumented in our state. That's 6% of our population. So they're not the criminals that you purport them to be. They're our neighbors and
I'm
our
not calling
friends.
them criminals.
Well,
I'm not calling
what I'm calling them
is non-Americans, which they are. And I'm not against them, actually. I think they're probably mostly nice people. But I think the government has a duty, first and foremost, to protect its own people. And in New Jersey, as you know, I used to live in the state, so I know too, has cities that are crumbling and pathetic and dangerous, and the schools are terrible. So where's the emphasis on that?
Well, I don't know where you're saying the schools are terrible. And first off, Governor Murphy is going to make schools and fully funding a priority. We have some of the best public schools in the nation. So you can, pick and choose different scores from cities that have their own issues and try again to make an inappropriate premise.
Is Newark the biggest city in New Jersey? I think it was when I lived there.
Jersey City and Newark, give or take, about the same size.
Okay, so if you've got 12% of high schoolers adequate in math, do you think that's a success?
Of course it isn't, and we can always do better, and that's one of the governor's priorities. But I thought we came to talk about the department that is going to look after those who are refugees, those who are dreamers,
it's a state in deficit,
those who are green card holders. We have to make sure they have access to adequate information, no different than adequate legal services.
So I think we'll both agree that a government's first job is to take care of its own citizens, the ones who put it in power in the first place, whose votes give it legitimacy. So how does giving financial aid for college tuition to illegals help American citizens in New Jersey?
See, you're skipping ahead to all of that. When it comes to it, what we need to do, when you look at what's happened now within the last year and a half or year of President Trump, we've seen statistics go down from a crime reporting perspective among the Latino population as it relates to domestic violence, as it relates to sexual assault, down by as much as 20%. Why is that? It's because they're afraid to report it. Is that in our best interest to keep us safe? Do you think that criminals are discriminating and just going after undocumented?
I think we may be having parallel conversations. We may be having parallel conversations. I just asked you, the governor, I think today said our plan is to use taxpayer money to help the children of people here illegally go to college. And I know why it's great for them. I can see why they're happy about it. Why should a New Jersey resident who's an American citizen think this helps him?
Well, overall, you're taking a piece of the component of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about driver's licenses. Now, guess what? Undocumenteds drive anyway. Isn't it better to make sure that they take a safety test, are better prepared to do so, can get drivers to get insurance? Isn't that in all of our best interest to make us all safer?
Well, I don't know. It would probably be best if they left, but since they're here, look, I get it, but what I find confusing is, since you're not going to answer my question about college tuition, how about this? Democrats tell us that there are millions of African Americans, citizens, who don't have driver's licenses. Why isn't New Jersey starting a program to get them driver's licenses, and instead giving them to illegal aliens with a new program? I'm missing it.
Well,
why?
I didn't know that the show or your bent was to force people to do things that they can otherwise do. You wouldn't suggest that we should force licenses on people, right? That's not, I don't think, your philosophy.
But I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying Democrats are always saying we can't have voter ID laws because a lot of African Americans don't have IDs. Here, your state is saying we're going to help people here illegally get IDs. Why not help your own people first? That's the theme I'm asking you about, and I'm not getting a real answer.
Yeah, and don't even get into the voter ID piece, because, as you know, that's only about voter suppression, and you're picking on groups of people that happen to vote Democratic. That you're trying to keep from suppressing voting.
I'm not picking on anybody. I'm asking why you're not helping them and instead helping illegal aliens. But let's get to my question about college aid. Every parent in America worries about the cost. Now taxpayers in New Jersey will be subsidizing the cost for illegal aliens. Why does that help them? Why does that help citizens of New Jersey?
Didn't you say, as you said, you should throw them all out? I mean, could you really be suggesting that we're going to take 500,000 people in our state and deport them? Could you be suggesting that we take 11 million
because you don't have an
nationwide and send them out of this country? I mean,
how about this? Let's start with
that's a different thing.
Maybe you should start with explaining to our viewers why it's in their interest as American citizens to see their tax dollars go to educate people here illegally. How does it help them? That's a fair question. We both agree.
It's a fair question, and eventually, when there's sanity in Washington, when there's a path to citizenship for the 11 million people that are here and undocumented, because they'll never be all removed, you know that, then those allowing individuals to become educated will make them more productive citizens and an important part of our fiber in this country.
You're
and that's why it's to our
now.
advantage. Why is it ever anybody's advantage to, provide aid to people? It's to make them more productive and better citizens in our country.
But there are lots of Americans, a lot of Americans, most Americans who worry about the cost of tuition for their kids. It's their country. Why not take that money and give it to them to help their kids? I don't understand.
A whole different topic. As you know, Governor Murphy, in one of his priorities, is relating to having junior colleges and tuition free for New Jersey citizens that are good students. So there is much by way of programs that you're just focusing on, the one having to do with supporting those who are undocumented, and particularly the dreamers, the refugees, as well as green card holders, to have a clearinghouse, legal aid, so they can understand what their options are and not be afraid. That's a fair thing to do.
And fight federal law. Yeah, I get it. Okay, thanks a lot, Assemblyman. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.